Now we're going to talk to an old friend of ours who hasn't been on the show in a while, Hans Johnson. How you like them apples? Hans, how are you?
I'm great. It's great to be back with you.
All right, great to have you. Of course, Hans writes for In These Times often. This time you wrote in a Philly paper. Which paper was it?
The Philadelphia Inquirer.
I'm familiar with that paper. All right. Now, what was the topic, Hans?
The topic was Bayard Rustin, who was a sort of forgotten hero of the civil rights movement, who was black and gay and a longtime crusader against war, but who was a real founding thinker and doer of the early sit-in movements that led to the civil rights movement that we now know of from the 1960s and into the 1970s. But later in his life, he actually became more open as a gay man, even though his sex life had been used as a kind of cudgel against him throughout his activism during the civil rights years.
Well, I wanted to ask you a couple of things about that. Number one, you wrote about him because of the march recently, right? That was the connection.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Now, before we get on to Rustin, just a real quick question on that. You know, Barney Frank had some harsh words and said the only thing you guys are putting pressure on in terms of the marchers is the grass. Now, do you disagree with him?
I think Barney has an important point in that there was a very vibrant debate within the LGBT community leading up to the March on Washington about whether it was a strategically smart maneuver and whether it was a good investment of time and resources, given other demands at the grassroots and state level for LGBT rights right now. I think it's important to remember that at the same time as people were putting this march together and calling for some kind of loud cry on the National Mall, a much larger segment of the LGBT rights movement was really mobilizing around three major fights we face right now at the ballot box this fall. In Maine, where the state law for marriage equality is under attack from religious right activists seeking its repeal, and there's a very vibrant No on One coalition there pushing to reject that repeal of the marriage equality law. In Washington State, where the domestic partnership law is under attack and where the Approve 71 campaign is in full swing trying to secure that law. And actually in my hometown of Kalamazoo, Michigan, where something as basic as a non-discrimination law that includes sexual orientation and gender identity in the city human rights law is under attack also from religious right activists seeking to defend discrimination there.
Right, but does the march help or hurt those causes?
Well, I think some people legitimately saw the march as a diversion or as a detour from the important goals of putting resources at this time of economic stringency for so many people into those local campaigns and as a deviation from the importance of putting maximum clout and energy into those campaigns where victory is really needed.
Yeah.
And I think some people forget that it's very important to make a cause known and to make it visible through spectacles like national marches. But, you know, the loudest messages in politics are sent by victories and losses at the ballot box. And I think many people in our movement, as I speak as someone very much involved in gay rights and a board member of the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force, that's something that we can't afford to have that message be anything but victory on November 3rd.
Yeah, I hear you on that, but here's my rule number one.
Our formula is this. We go out, we hit people in the mouth. Number one.
Okay. I'm in favor of hitting people in the mouth. And I know that it worked for even the lunatics on the right who came and screamed and yelled and shouted at the town hall events and got the idiot media to believe that there was a significant opposition to health care reform, right, let alone the public option. And here you have, you know, real, you know, citizens who actually understand what they're marching for, and I think just showing up makes a difference. I really do, and I don't think it really diverts their attention too much.
I think that the march actually did succeed to the extent that it put a focus on the breadth and diversity, the young and old members of our movement, and the ability of our movement to walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yes, there you go. I agree with that. Look, and by the way, did you see Lady Gaga's speech or no?
Whose?
Lady Gaga?
Yes, I did. I did catch a bit of that.
Okay, all right. I loved her ending. Bless God, bless the gays. She's she's an interesting figure. Let's put it that way.
And got almost as much applause as President Obama.
Yes. Now back to Bayard Rustin. Now he's perfect for you because he's a progressive and he's was fighting for these causes, and at the same time he's fighting for gay rights and suffered through a lot to get there. And that's why you thought it was a good opportunity to bring him up. Let me ask you something. You wrote in the article about how instrumental he was in influencing Martin Luther King towards nonviolence and the ways of Gandhi. How true is that? Was he the figure in influencing King that way, or one of the many guys around him on that?
He was the man, and I have to laud the Philadelphia Inquirer for both taking the time to put this piece in a timely way on Sunday and digging up from its own archives an Associated Press photo that showed Rustin walking with King at a point when King looks as to be the young man that he was at the outset of the Montgomery bus boycott. There were a number of people brandishing guns and making saber-rattling kinds of rhetoric on both sides of that fight, and it's not fair to actually depict them as somehow equally matched in the forces of Jim Crow and the power of intimidation, bombing, and other pieces of intimidation that they held in their arsenal at the time. But still, the temptation towards violence was one that Rustin saw in the civil rights forces in Montgomery, and went to Montgomery to help quell the violence and help school King in how to leverage the antagonism of his opponents, shine a light on it, and use that for his and the movement's ongoing benefit. It was a stroke of genius that Rustin, who was uniquely schooled in the tactics of Gandhi, having gone to India to learn his utmost in that field, had brought to Montgomery. And not only did he understand that so well, but I think more generally, as he showed throughout his career, he understood the power of going to where the fight was, not sitting in Washington, not sitting in New York, but going to where the fight was and listening and adapting his own tactics to the needs of people on the ground.
You know, we have about 15 seconds left, Hans, but doesn't it show enormous, shouldn't we give him enormous credit to Martin Luther King, too, to have gotten beyond the gay baiting, et cetera, at the time, to listen to Rustin?
It's very important to realize that King, while carrying on some extramarital relations that might not be called decorous even at his own time, was big enough to understand that Rustin was a genius, and that the double standards that still apply in politics towards gay people and straight people were ones that Rustin's own noble work helped overcome. All
right. Hans Johnson, president of Progressive Victory, writes for In These Times, and then this one is in the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Look forward to being back, James.
All right. Thanks, Hans.
Watch the live show at theyoungturks.com.